Hey, good morning, friends. Today is Friday, March the 7th, 2025, and the time now is 7:35 a.m. So, friends, I want to talk briefly about the concept, the idea, or the term, the reality of reverse Kissingerism. Now, that is a concept, an idea, okay, in geopolitics that is being propagated out there or being stressed. Many thinkers, observers, and also commentators on international relations and also on US policies, okay, international or foreign policies, have been stressing. So, friends, these observers or thinkers or commentators on US policies or on geopolitics continue to stress the concept of reverse Kissingerism. Now, they are stressing that Donald Trump's policy towards Russia or the reorientation of the United States foreign policy or interaction with Russia and China and NATO, Europe, is based on his willingness to reverse the Kissinger doctrine. What does that mean? How does it play out? And what could be the consequences of that? Now, my friends, you are watching the playlist series, The Trends and Headlines in Geopolitics, and this is episode 31. Once again, friends, you are watching the playlist series, The Trends and Headlines in Geopolitics, and this is episode 31. So, friends, what is reverse Kissingerism or reverse Kissinger doctrine? How does it play out? What does it mean? And what are the potential consequences? Now, to understand the concept, okay, the reality of reverse Kissingerism, we need to go back to the 1960s and 1970s. And this has to deal with former US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, who is known in the US as one of the most brilliant, okay, one of the most resolute, one of the most charismatic government official in the United States or foreign policy expert. So Kissinger developed the theory, the policy of isolating the Soviet Union from China. Basically, the United States will befriend China, isolate the Soviet Union, and as a result, when the United States, or should the United States go after the Soviet Union will be isolated and will not have any powerful country in its backing. Now, during the Cold War, we know that the United States saw the Soviet Union as a threat, as the most formidable enemy, okay, to its national security. The Soviet Union was very powerful militarily, though economically and in terms of trade, many have agreed that the Soviet Union was not as closer advanced to the United States or to the general West. So, friends, there arose tension between the Soviet Union and its ally, China. And the United States basically decided to exploit the division, the tension between China and the Soviet Union. Kissinger made a secret trip to China and spoke with the Chinese, okay, to the Chinese leaders. Isolate yourself from the Soviet Union, support the United States, okay, and we will support you economically. By doing that, by removing yourself from the Soviet camp, China, the United States is going to support you economically. The United States is going to open up its market to Chinese products, and the United States is going to ensure that foreign investment, okay, comes into China. Basically, the United States was able to achieve that. The Soviet Union became isolated. The United States won the Chinese support. The United States then began to allow foreign investment into China. Now, friends, the result of that, especially given that the Chinese people, okay, or China had a government that had strategy and had policy, okay, a goal to develop China, to industrialize China. You have foreign investment going into China. The Chinese government basically put their policy in effect. And today, what do we have? We have a mighty China that is far more of a threat to the United States than the Soviet Union was. China economically, okay, is being predicted to surpass the United States soon to become the world's most formidable economy, the world's most advanced and the largest economy. In terms of military technology, the Chinese are catching up fast. In terms of useful slash public technology that anyone can use, they are passing the United States and the West. Just recently, the Chinese released DeepSeek, which basically is beating down ChatGPT and OpenAI and so on. If you go to China, Chinese cities are cleaner. You can see that there are Chinese engineers, okay, and experts who are very much versed in their field, and Chinese cities are well laid out. In China, the subway system and other systems, okay, of infrastructure and so on are working smoothly. So the Chinese are moving far ahead of the United States and the West in various ways. Economically, the Chinese are out there, okay? With the exception of the United States, we can say that the Chinese have surpassed the entire West. Okay, it's over for the West. In fact, the Asian countries are far ahead of the West in many ways, which, if Asian countries can bring themselves together and develop a strong pan-Asianism system, it's over for the West. As much as the Soviet Union was powerful militarily, the Soviet Union was far weaker economically to the United States and the West. However, for China, in both economic and also military and other forms of technology or system, the Chinese are either far ahead of the United States and the West or they are catching up fast. Now, friends, with this in current times, many Americans and also those in the government are saying that Russia today, okay, the descendant of the Soviet Union, is far weaker and is not a threat to the United States and Western security or dominance. Now, friends, if we are to put it in a very simplistic term, what many Americans and Western thinkers are saying to Russia is that, hey, Russia, you ain't it. You ain't all that. You are not a threat to us. You are nothing. Now, the West is focusing on China because the Chinese are far more powerful today than the Russian Soviet Union used to be, at least in more ways than the Soviet Union used to be. Now, in terms of China, it is said now that the United States, okay, foreign policy, Donald Trump's foreign policy towards Russia, which Trump is said to be causing up to Vladimir Putin. Trump recently just voted against condemning Russia in the United Nations. Trump goes after those who criticize Vladimir Putin. Trump wants to end the war in Ukraine in a manner which could benefit Russia. And that's what many are saying. That's what it appears to be. Now, it is being said that the reason for this is that Trump is trying to take Russia away from China so that China can be isolated. And then Donald Trump and the United States will go after China. I think the United States is not going to achieve that. One is because I do realize, or I believe that Chinese and Russian leaders know that, for example, if Russia begin to come in the United States, in the Western camp, and China is isolated, let's assume that the West is successful in defeating China, breaking China apart, destroying China. What is going to be the next goal? The West is now going to come after Russia. And when the West comes after Russia, Russia is alone because China had been defeated and destroyed. It's kind of like the same thing that is happening right now, where the West seem to be, or at least they've been trying to cause it up to India as a means to keep India away from potentially becoming friends, okay? Smoothing relationship with the Chinese so that they can use India as a proxy against China. Perhaps this is one of the reasons why recently Donald Trump had been disrespecting India and is actually imposing tariff on India. Perhaps it could be to scare India, basically have India to begin to cause up to Donald Trump so that China can be further isolated and there can be a proxy along the border with China, which is India, against China. It could be. So, in terms of isolating Russia from China, I don't think the United States and the West are going to succeed in that. Because, yes, there is a saying, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. You got my back, I got your back. But I think the only way, the best way I can put it is that two people standing up, their backs are touching. Now, friends, because their backs are touching, let's assume my hand here, okay, represent two people. Now, the inside of my palm represent the backs of the two people, and the outside of my hands are their front. That means they are looking left, they are looking right. In this case, we're going to touch backs, and your back is going to be my responsibility to watch, and mine is yours to watch. That means they are not going to separate. They are going to basically combine and make sure they do as much as they can do. They do well to protect each other's back. So I think that's what the Russians and the Chinese are doing and going to continue to do, because they do realize if they allow one of them to be destroyed, defeated, okay, basically grabbed by the West, the other is over, is done with. And if that's the case, for example, if Russia is defeated in Ukraine, and let's say Russia is smashed, because I don't think the West, the United States, is going to defeat Russia in Ukraine and just stop there. The United States will want to basically destroy Russia, okay, break Russia apart completely. Which, if the United States does that, the remnant of what Russia is going to be, the various countries that are going to emerge, the US can easily, I won't say isolate, but to subjugate them and use them as a proxy, okay, as a landing base against China, which means China is isolated and is going to be surrounded. Now, if the United States defeat and destroy China, then it is over for the global south, for the rest of the world. Because the Chinese are providing aid, okay? Military aid, financial aid, economic aid, okay? Loans and development in various ways for Africa, Asia, Latin and Central America, the Caribbean, and even some European countries. So the defeat of Russia and potentially China is a threat for the security of the global south. Now, my friends, the problem with this is that if what we are seeing, Donald Trump's policy towards Russia is a reverse Kissingerism or reverse policy of Henry Kissinger, which basically was meant to isolate Russia by removing China from Soviet orbit. If what Donald Trump is doing is the reverse of that, perhaps I do think Donald Trump is going to hit a wall. This is because as much as it is said that Trump is closing up to Russia, to Putin, Trump has been insulting NATO and European countries. So in this case, I think it could be a problem for Donald Trump, because Donald Trump will need also NATO and Europe's backing to go against China. This is because if Europe begin to think pragmatically and begin to think in their own interest like the United States does, perhaps we can say that China and Asia should not be a problem for Europe because they are far away. So the fact that Donald Trump is insulting Europe and causing up to Russia, who knows what radicalism could emerge in Europe that could say, you know what, we're not going to go fight the Chinese. They are how many thousand miles away? We're not going to fight the Chinese to please you. Why? You are causing up to an entity which we are having problem with, or which we do have problem with. However, either way, what we are seeing perhaps is the unmasking of European dominance, European supremacy, okay, white supremacy. And I don't mean white supremacy as in the casual racism, okay, or the conventional racism that we are used to, but white supremacy in that Europeanness, okay, whiteness must subjugate, must conquer the world, must control the world. That was the case even during the days of colonialism and imperialism. Yes, European countries fought among themselves. However, they all had a belief, one belief system, which is that Europeans were better than the rest of the world. All the people of the world are subjugated, okay, or subject of European or Europeanness. So perhaps as much as Trump could be cozying up to Russia, let's assume Donald Trump succeeded in doing that, and Europe is subjugated. And perhaps this is the reason why Donald Trump is cozying up to Russia while at the same time insulting Europe. Perhaps because he believed that Europe is already subjugated anyway by the United States, with too many bases and the linkage of European financial and economic system to or with the United States. So let's assume that Donald Trump in the US succeed in bringing Russia towards the United States within the US orbit and also keeping Europe subjugated. In that case, what we are seeing is still the United States leading the charge and being the head of white European dominance and supremacy over the rest of the world. But then, one thing I want to say is that if Donald Trump and the United States succeed in subjugating Europe continuously and bringing Russia within the American orbit, when the United States go after Greenland, and I think we should look at what Donald Trump is saying as a reality, as something that he believed that the United States should take Greenland. When the United States grabs Greenland, which the United States already has bases on, Denmark can do nothing about it. Europe is vulnerable and weak and subjugated and cannot do anything about it. Now, friends, let's assume that Donald Trump and the United States manages to bring Russia within, okay, U.S. orbit. Then I think there could be a problem in this case. For example, as long as Russia accepts a subjugated position where it is a small brother, a little brother to the United States, all is going to be well. But once the Russians begin to resist being controlled, okay, or dominated by the United States, we are going to see arise the tension between Russia and the United States. Because at the end of the day, what we are seeing is a policy of subjugation. The United States and the West wants no equal, especially to the entities of the world which they consider to be not European, sub-European, partially Europeans, but inferior to them, which I do believe many in Europe sees Russia to be that. Now, friends, please tell me what you think, and I really want to know what you think. But friends, I'm going to end here. I want to thank you for being a member of the Echoing Voice community, my friends. But most especially and most importantly, I want to thank you a lot for watching the Echoing Voice. Peace.